and welcome to the Stealthy Automation Show. Get ready for some serious hacking. Today we're going to be talking about web scrapers versus anti-scrapers, and we'll be covering a lot of the tools you see below here, which include commercial scraping tools, open source tools on GitHub, as well as lots of anti-scraping tools and CAPTCHAs, such as the ones you see there. So back in the old days, the bots looked like bots and they were easily detectable. However, recently, the bots look a lot like humans, similar to Battlestar Galactica's human vs. Cylon comparison, where you can't tell the two apart. But if you have to fight some Cylons, have Lieutenant Kara Thrace, aka Starbuck, at your side. And if you're going to go up against the Borg, you better have Commander Riker at your side as well. So a bit about me. I'm Michael Mintz, and I lead the automation team at iBoss. And iBoss provides cybersecurity solutions to companies all around the globe, including the US government. And I also created the SeleniumBase test automation framework, which you can find on GitHub. It's a powerful tool for testing and also bypassing bot detection. And recently, I was at the PyCon conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is a major Python conference around the world. And it was just huge. It was packed, tons of vendors and people. Major people were there: Microsoft, Amazon, Google, etc. And even the creator of the Python programming language was there. That's Guido van Rossum. And I got to meet him too. There he is behind me, speaking to someone else there. And also at PyCon was Al Swigart. He's the creator of PyAutoGUI, which is a tool that lets you programmatically control the mouse and the keyboard. It's particularly useful in bypassing CAPTCHAs, and it's integrated into my SeleniumBase test automation framework. So here's an example of bypassing Cloudflare's challenge page with SeleniumBase. You'll do from SeleniumBase import SB, and then you'll initialize your driver, you'll set the URL, and then you'll do sb.activate CDP mode with the URL, and then you can call sb.GUI-click-CAPTCHA to use PyAutoGUI to click the CAPTCHA if it wasn't automatically bypassed when you load the page. And here's another example. So for instance, if the Cloudflare CAPTCHA is integrated within websites, you may need to do additional things. So here you have Cloudflare directly inside the website rather than a page that appears before loading the website. And in that case, you may need to use sb.cdp.GUI-click-element with the selector that appears directly above the shadow root element of the Cloudflare CAPTCHA. So there are different types of Cloudflare CAPTCHAs, and there is a different way of bypassing each type. And SeleniumBase has all the examples for all the various types of CAPTCHAs that there are. So SeleniumBase was once just a test automation framework, but it has since evolved into a stealthy test automation framework.
Engage cloaking device, Mr. Tigger.
And at PyCon, I gave a talk about SeleniumBase at the Open Spaces sessions. So there you have it, SeleniumBase Deep Dive. And I basically talked about all the various features, the CAPTCHA bypass abilities, the two-factor login authentication handling, etc. And there's just a lot of content there. And I spoke to as many people about SeleniumBase as I could. And after that, I noticed that SeleniumBase was trending on GitHub. So perhaps my marketing sales skills for SeleniumBase worked out. And as you can see here, it was trending with over 400 stars gathered in that week for the English spoken language, language Python, and for the week for the date range. So only Microsoft was beating me out, but it's really hard to take on Microsoft. They're pretty big. So let's talk about anti-bots, anti-scrapers, and CAPTCHAs. So here are the various tools that people could use in order to prevent bots from web scraping their websites, etc. So you have physical CAPTCHAs that you may need to click, such as HCAPTCHA, reCAPTCHA, and Cloudflare. So Google makes reCAPTCHA, and Cloudflare's CAPTCHA is called the Turnstile. And these are various CAPTCHAs, but they're not all created equal. So for instance, if you can't get past the HCAPTCHA, it's going to make you click on images, and this is really hard for regular automation to do unless you've integrated some type of AI to handle the clicking. And in this scenario here, Google's reCAPTCHA does something similar. It detects the bot, then it's going to make you click on all the squares that contain stairs or buses in that example. So reCAPTCHA is pretty good. And then there's the Cloudflare Turnstile, which is a lot easier to bypass. You just pretty much have to click it with PyAutoGUI using a stealthy test automation framework, and that takes care of that. So there are also invisible anti-bot services such as Imperva Encapsula, Akamai, Datadome, Perimeter X, Casada, Shape Security, and also the invisible Google reCAPTCHA, which is not quite as powerful as the enterprise Google reCAPTCHA. So there might be different reCAPTCHAs, and not all of them are created equal. Some are more powerful than others. And there's also the Protector CAPTCHA, which is an open source CAPTCHA system where all the code is freely available online and people can take it and modify it and add it to their website. So the Protector CAPTCHA is quite powerful in detecting various bots. For instance here, if you try to go to a website using regular Selenium, Protector is going to detect that through various means. For instance, it might detect the navigator.webdriver there, or it might detect the CDC variables that appear inside the Chrome DevTools console, and these appear whenever using Selenium to spin up a browser. So you can see here it detected window.cdc, and also it might detect WebDriver on its own within the web browser. So here's just an example of the Protector open source CAPTCHA system blocking a Selenium bot. Now, there are several different open source stealth frameworks with more than 1,000 GitHub stars. So I'm going to cover a few of those right now, or 10 of those actually. So you can see the list here, and I'm just going to go one by one. So we've got Undetected Chrome Driver, which is a very popular tool. It's got over 11,000 GitHub stars, and it was basically a huge popular tool that many people were using. However, the creator of Undetected Chrome Driver recently created the successor, No Driver, which uses CDP, the Chrome DevTools protocol, to do even more. So for instance, it provides a blazing fast framework for web automation, web scraping, bots, and other ways of basically preventing CAPTCHAs and anti-bot systems from detecting you. So that's pretty powerful. That's got 2.6 thousand GitHub stars. There's also SeleniumBase, which is the framework I created. Python APIs for web automation, testing, and bypassing bot detection. That's got 11.2 thousand GitHub stars. Then there's Patchwright, the undetected version of the Playwright testing and automation library. And specifically for people who are using Playwright for automation, this can patch it so that it appears more stealthy. And this one has 1,000 GitHub stars. There's also Puppeteer Real Browser, which is designed to bypass bot detecting CAPTCHAs such as Cloudflare. It acts as a real browser and can be managed with Puppeteer. This has 1.3 thousand GitHub stars. There's Scrapling, an undetectable, powerful, flexible, high-performance Python library to make web scraping easy and effortless as it should be. This has 5.4 thousand GitHub stars. There's PyDol, which is a library for automating Chromium-based browsers without a WebDriver, offering realistic interactions, and that has 4.7 thousand GitHub stars. There's Botosaurus, the all-in-one framework to build undefeatable scrapers with 2,000 GitHub stars. There's Cloud Scraper, a Python module to bypass Cloudflare's anti-bot page with 5.1 thousand GitHub stars. And there's Drision Page, a Python-based web automation tool, powerful and elegant, and even though it doesn't say it in the description, it actually has some powerful stealth capabilities, and this one is very popular with over 10,000 GitHub stars. And also, the instruction manual for Drision Page is in Chinese. So as you can see, there are lots of open source stealth frameworks to choose from. Let's also talk about some commercial frameworks for stealth, such as BrightData and ZenRows. So both of them are quite popular. However, BrightData has over 20,000 customers worldwide, whereas ZenRows only has about 2,000 plus customers worldwide. You can see that there are lots of major organizations using both. For instance, with BrightData, you have companies like Deloitte, you have Mozilla, you have, NBC Universal, you have Pfizer, etc. So lots of major companies. And with ZenRows, you also have some major companies like Microsoft, etc., IBM. So perhaps Microsoft chose ZenRows not because it's better, but for other reasons. So for instance, BrightData recently donated a lot of money to the Selenium organization, becoming a Selenium level sponsor. Now, for those of you who don't know, Selenium and Playwright are competitors in the automation space, and so Microsoft's Playwright is competing with Selenium, and they're battling it out for the market share of web automation systems. So there's that going on. And also, interestingly, a bunch of companies sued BrightData because BrightData was very effective in web scraping data from them. So for instance, here, it talks about Meta slash Facebook suing BrightData over the right to collect data. And at the end of this, the ruling was that web scraping is 100% legal in the eyes of the courts as long as it only involves public data and not private data, and that the web scraping isn't done while logged into the website. So this was a huge victory for BrightData. And it wasn't just Meta slash Facebook suing BrightData, it was also X slash Twitter that was also suing BrightData over their powerful scraping capabilities. So it's just amazing that these two mega giants, Meta and Twitter, etc., basically losing to BrightData in the lawsuit. And there are only a few explanations for how BrightData was able to beat out those lawsuits against them. And those include having possibly the best legal team in the world. Actually, this is Karen Reed's defense team, so not actually BrightData's lawyers, but it's for, the screenshot. And the other reason people might think that BrightData won those lawsuits is because the Mossad may have been involved. Now, BrightData is an Israeli company, and the Mossad basically does its job, which is protecting Israeli interests and Israeli companies from foreign invaders. So in the case where Meta and Twitter wanted to sue BrightData, Mossad may have stepped in to help out BrightData in that situation, or it might have been the legal team doing all the work. Well, speaking of the Mossad, there was a rumor that I once had a party with Mossad agents, but actually it was a party with the IDF. So this photo is from the time where I proposed to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and this was on top of a roof in Jerusalem, and the IDF basically joined in for a nice photo op. Now, the Mossad and the IDF are different. The IDF is the Israel Defense Forces, whereas the Mossad is an intelligence agency. And on the topic of the IDF, I did once get to visit one of their army bases in Israel, and I believe this event was for a pizza party that was happening on Hanukkah.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.
So I know it's been a pretty chaotic situation in Israel lately, so I hope all my friends are safe. Pretty dangerous, the whole war with Iran, so hopefully everyone's doing okay. Lots of friends in Jerusalem, as well as family in Netanya and other parts of Israel. Oh, if anyone ever goes to Netanya, I hear they have a highly energetic football/soccer team there. So let's get back to the presentation from that diversion. So BrightData is another cool option for web scraping, and I particularly like them because they blog about me. So for instance, they wrote a few posts, how to use proxies with SeleniumBase, and they wrote the guide to web scraping with SeleniumBase in 2025. And they just have a bunch of various powerful tools that people can use. They've got scrapers, they've got CAPTCHA bypass tools, various APIs for web crawling, etc. They have different residential proxies there that you can set up so that if you're trying to automate from a proxy server, you can hide your IP address to make it a residential IP address so that it's not detectable via anti-bot systems, because if you're running directly from a cloud server such as AWS, etc., then your IP address is going to be known to come from somewhere like AWS, and therefore you could get blocked for that. And there's also ZenRows, as I mentioned earlier, and they also blog about me. They had a few articles, how to bypass Cloudflare with Selenium, and then inside that article they talked about SeleniumBase, and then they also had web scraping with SeleniumBase in Python in 2025, and also how to use proxies with SeleniumBase in Python. So they also have a bunch of comparable tools similar to BrightData. They've got scraper APIs, they've got residential proxies, they've got CAPTCHA bypass tools, etc. So those are two ideas for commercial web scraping products if people are interested. However, BrightData appears to be considerably more popular than ZenRows. So that's web scrapers versus anti-scrapers. And SeleniumBase is the framework that I created that you can find on GitHub, all-in-one browser automation. There's web crawling, testing, scraping, stealth, and lots of powerful tools. There are various modes for stealth, such as UC mode and CDP mode. There's also a recorder so that you can generate your scripts instantly. And one of the things that makes SeleniumBase stand apart from the other competitors in the open source space is the sheer number of examples. So now we've reached the live demo portion of this presentation, and we've got a lot of exciting live demos planned for you. All right, so we're going to be running examples from the SeleniumBase examples CDP mode folder. If you clone the SeleniumBase repo, you'll have access to that, and then you'll find lots of various examples that you can run directly from there. So let's do a simple one, Python raw gitlab.py, where we're going to be bypassing a Cloudflare page that appears when you first try to go to the GitLab site. So you can see here you've gotten through, and then we're going to run some fancy JavaScript from SeleniumBase to say that SeleniumBase wasn't detected. So if you want to see what the code for that looks like, we can do sbase print raw gitlab.py and then -n to add the line numbers. You can see here that once we set the URL, we activated CDP mode, and then we did UC-GUI click CAPTCHA. Now note that this is using UC equals true, which is the undetected Chrome driver mode. It's one of the ways of achieving stealth with SeleniumBase, and in combination with CDP mode, you get some pretty advanced stealth capabilities. And then there are also lots of other SeleniumBase methods where you can do advanced things, such as asserting elements, highlighting elements, etc. So let's run another example, Python raw planetmc.py, another example of a page where the Cloudflare CAPTCHA appears directly on the site itself. The CAPTCHA was bypassed automatically, and it was just that easy. Let's do sbase print raw planetmc.py and then add -n to see the line numbers. You can see that all that we were doing here was activating CDP mode and then calling sb.cdp.GUI click element in case it wasn't bypassed automatically. Now, when you're using sb.cdp.GUI click element for the selector, make sure you're using the element that appears directly above the shadow root of the Cloudflare turnstile. This will allow you to click inside the shadow root, which isn't normally visible with JavaScript. All right, so now that we've covered that, let's run another example. Let's do Python raw walmart.py, and we're going to basically scrape some prices of something from Walmart. So let's do a search for the Settlers of Catan board game. You can see that it's going in, and it's found several different items, and it's going to go through and scrape all that and then output it to the console. So you can see here in the display, Walmart search for Settlers of Catan board game, and then all these different games that it found with the prices there. So that's an example of scraping Walmart. Let's take a look at what that looks like. sbase print raw walmart.py -n. You can see it's quite a bit more advanced because there's more actions that you need to take. You're clicking on various elements, you're typing text in order to do a search, we're removing some advertising, and then we're looping through the output that it finds so I can scrape the names of the items as well as the prices. So there's a lot going on there. And because SeleniumBase has so many different examples, there's a lot here to help you get started so that you don't have to create all your scripts from scratch. So that was the Walmart example. Let's do another one. where we're going to web scrape hotel prices. So let's do Python raw bestwestern.py. We're going to go in and we're going to do a search. So let's say we're going to set our destination to be Palm Springs, California, USA. And then we're going to use the default check-in dates. And that's going to go in, do the search, find all the hotels, find the various prices. It's going to web scrape all that data and then output that to the console once it finds it all. So you can see here, Best Western Hotels in Palm Springs, California, USA for the dates here. And then you can see all the various hotels with the prices. So this is another SeleniumBase example of bypassing some pretty advanced bot detection systems. You can see here that there's just lots of different examples you can choose from. You can even change your fingerprint, such as changing your time zone data and geolocation. So let's do Python raw timezone sb.py, an example where we're going to change our time zone and geolocation. So now we're on India Standard Time near Lucknow, India. And now in the next part, we're going to go to Japan Standard Time in Japan, and the geolocation has changed again. Let's take a look at what that script looks like. So we'll do sbase print raw timezone sb.py -n. You can see here that we're activating CDP mode, and then once we set the URL, we're going to set the time zone here. So here it's Asia/Kolkata, and then we're setting the geolocation here, and then we're removing some advertising that might appear on that page. And then we're going to do the same thing again, but we're going to go to Japan. So we're going to set the time zone to be Asia/Tokyo, and then we're setting another geolocation for that. So that's just an example of changing your fingerprint so that you can be stealthy when automating. So up next, we're going to do some web scraping of Nike shoe prices. So we're going to run Python raw nike.py, and it's going to go to the Nike website, and then it's going to do a query for Nike Air Force One shoes. The data will be displayed on the screen, and then SeleniumBase will scrape that data and then output it to the console. As you can see here, found results for Nike Air Force One. You can see the various shoes with the prices. Let's take a look at the script for that. So let's do sbase print raw nike.py and then -n for the line numbers. You can see here, fairly simple. We activate CDP mode on the Nike website, and then we click a few things, we type some text, and then we loop through the results that it found and output that to the screen. So that is that example. This time let's do Python raw indeed.py, an example of searching a job search website that has Cloudflare protections. So you can see we bypassed one Cloudflare CAPTCHA there, and then after we go do a search on the Indeed page, it's going to throw a second Cloudflare turnstile CAPTCHA, and then PyAutoGUI through SeleniumBase is going to come in, click on that, and then it's going to web scrape the data there. So that's an example of bypassing multiple Cloudflare CAPTCHAs all at once. So that is that example. If you want to see what that looks like, we can do sbase print raw indeed.py, and let's just do that again with the line numbers. You can see that we're activating CDP mode. We're going to click the CAPTCHA, and then we're going to click a few buttons, type in some text, and then we're going to go click the CAPTCHA again because another one appears at a later point in the test, and then we're going to web scrape the data and print it out so that it displays on the console. So that's just an example, a more advanced one, where we're gathering data from a website while bypassing CAPTCHAs. So you can see that there's plenty of different examples here that you can run. There's a lot to cover, a lot to learn, so definitely try these out. There's also a lot of other SeleniumBase YouTube videos out there where we're pretty much running most of the examples that you see here. So if there's anything here that you want to see run, you can watch the YouTube video, or you can just try running it yourself because all the examples here should be up to date. Let's try one last one here. Let's do Python raw chatgpt.py because that's an interesting one. So we're going to then go to the website and do a query, compare Playwright to SeleniumBase in under 178 words, and then ChatGPT is going to display the response there, and then SeleniumBase is going to copy that response to the console output. So you can see here, if we scroll up, compare Playwright to SeleniumBase in under 178 words. Then we have the response from ChatGPT. I won't read the whole thing, but here we go. Playwright and SeleniumBase are both end-to-end testing frameworks, but they differ in design philosophy and capabilities. So that's an example of web scraping ChatGPT, and all these examples that you see here can also be run from GitHub Actions, and those examples are also in various YouTube videos that I've also already posted. So that's basically it for today. I hope you had a lot of fun learning about the various automation frameworks that are out there for web scraping, as well as some commercial possibilities and the tools that are used to stop automation in their tracks. It's a big battle out there, but it's a lot of fun. And hey, web scraping is legal as long as you're web scraping public data while you're not logged into a website. We've got BrightData to thank for that. So that means scrape away. And have a great time. So see y'all later, everyone.